Okay, it's Friday, June 28th. This is an end of the day, end of the week, and end of the month SPY recap. And today, first of all, in the daily chart, we end up with a pretty big 3-bar that ended up red, meaning we took out the high of the previous day, then reversed and came and took out the low of the previous day. We hit another target down here, and this is kind of the third 3-bar within the last 2 weeks. We had all these red bars were 3 bars, as it turns out. The first one, was after a big run up, so it's not necessarily an actionable signal one way or the other. We didn't know what would happen. I tried to go a little lower, but then it couldn't really come back up on its attempt higher. Gave another 3-bar to the downside. This one ended the week, last week with a shooter bar, and we thought maybe we could head lower, but as the week went on, we didn't really get moved to the downside, so we started up, which we'll get into today as the final move up, and then it ends up with another 3-bar now, and again, it's not necessarily an actionable signal going into the next day, but it does sort of indicate, if we look at the weekly chart, we have now 2 shooter bars, so what we were kind of anticipating might happen last week might be delayed a week and might actually be happening this week. This one looks a little more of a failure bar than this one. It's exhaustion risk on the upside in general. At any moment we can have 2 down weeks like in here, or we can have a few of them, so we will see what happens, but I'm kind of expecting that now, even though it's not really an actionable signal with this 3-bar. Again, what it really did was it expand the range a little bit. In other words, we had a 5-day range here with these last 5 bars. Now we came up, took out the high of, once we try to break out of those 5 bars, we hit our target and immediately failed, and now we came down to the bottom of this range. So to me now, this whole area is one big range. It's overlapping, essentially 2 weeks in a row. If we spread out the 15-minute chart, you can kind of see now it's the high up here and the lows down here. So, we got to break out of that is my point, one way or the other. And this 3-bar isn't really, the actionable signal, but you would expect it to test lower given the red bar, given the weekly failure. We should hit this target of a 2-down week then. And then at that point, we see, do we head into this gap in here between the high of this bar and the low of this bar? I'm kind of expecting that. And that could be a turning point in there. But if the week starts down, we're going to have to maybe wait for a weekly reversal back up before considering long. It's hard to, the only way we go to the upside here on an actionable signal, either we gap up strong next week right above this high, which I don't anticipate since we closed all the way down here. Maybe we get a 1-bar and then we start up, and that could be a breakout, or maybe we get a 2 down that really can't follow through all that much, kind of like these bars, and then a 2 down, 2 up. So it's going to take a little bit of time probably to start an upward signal, even though the overall trend's up. So this time I'm expecting that pullback, but it's not actionable tomorrow. I think, the next day we're going to see if it heads lower, and then kind of see if this 3-bar wants to expand into a weekly, broadening action, which if we come down and into this gap and can't reverse, we could be heading down to this low and this low and this low. So we will see what happens in the weeks ahead, but these 2 bars here kind of look like a pullback should finally happen this week. In terms of today's price action, it was pretty clear from the start. Between the blue lines was the pre-market range, and then we had the green bar to start. We're breaking out of that 4-day range, 5-day range actually we identified. So you have to, give it a shot to the upside, especially since you had a pre-market target here. It was a good trade on bar 2 if you wanted to take it to the upside. I was trading other stocks instead, Nvidia. But anyway, it went up. It took out, the pre-market high. It continued higher here on bar 3. And if you're a strat trader, once you're breaking out of that range here high, our next target is right up here. So this was an area, to scale out, take profits, whatever you wanted to do, or try to hold on and see if it goes higher. But that was kind of the target. And as it turns out, within the next 1, 2, then 3, 4 bars, it made a pretty big pullback. I shot videos out. To me, this was not the orderly pullback that should normally get a second push up. That's how I view the 15-minute chart all the time. I bought puts here at this little red line, and expecting the lows of the day to be taken out, wanted to see what happened from there. Once we came down and did that, we wanted to see if we take out the midpoint of the prior day. We were already back into this range, and once we did that, it's not surprising we came down to the red line, which was the low of yesterday, and that's kind of where it immediately hit and popped up. But that was your target, the outside day. Once we failed here, moved back, took out the intraday low, took out the midpoint of this bar, we were all of a sudden going to the bottom of this range again. So we came down there, paused a little bit, but closed red. So that's why you're expecting to at least test lower, but we're still in the range, so keep that in mind. finally, on the monthly chart, we end up with a green month, not as strong as some of the previous months, but when you see that month, you kind of expect the midpoint of this to hold and the highs to be tested. We're just going to have to see if maybe we start down a little bit first. We're going to have the open of the month, whatever the open is on the first day of the month. That's going to be a reference point. Here was the open of the previous month. So, once we get that open, we'll know whether to stay biased a little red, and see if it starts out red, maybe we get, a weekly big pullback. Maybe we get a 2 down month. Who knows? But if it starts red, then we want to see signals happen that turn it, green, and then we could expect maybe those highs to be taken out. So we'll see what happens. Like, on this red month here, you might expect that we had reasons to think it might be, there's a few failures down here. But anyway, once the new month starts, it starts green pretty quickly. Your bias green the whole month. So even though we went up green, it doesn't mean this month can't start out red and start lower. And we'll kind of, if it does, we'll judge how much it eats into this bar, and are we getting close to a 2 down month or not. That becomes kind of a big picture, viewpoint in terms of, the monthly chart now that we're starting a new month. So all month long, we were kind of green and biased to the upside, and now we'll see what develops going into next month. So keep that open in mind. We're going to move this line, which was the open of the last month, wherever it opens this month, somewhere up here. So we will keep that in mind on the recaps. The weekly chart looks like it wants to start lower. Here's the gap area to fill, and if it doesn't, hold in there and start up in some way, we'd be going a lot lower. And the 3 bar looked like a failure at this target up here, but we're still in a big range. So any move, that starts next week, I want to, either up or down. I'm always ready because I've identified a range to see if we try to break out and fail. That could be a good, signal the opposite way. Same thing to the upside. This was kind of an upside failure, given that, structure intraday. That was pretty clear, at least, the way I view 15-minute price action, that this line here was going to take out the lows of the day and see what happens. And once it took it out, you had the obvious pause areas, near the pre-market low and the midpoint of the prior day, but then it just held in here and didn't do much. And then once we broke through there, we got to, the outside bar of the downside. So that's it for the month. And again, let's this looks like a repeat of the previous week, but a little more, with a little more certainty that it should try to go lower, whereas this week didn't do that to start. So we will see what happens to start the month of July.